Well, Byron, you're CEO of Simplified Innovation. I'm hearing that you're like super busy, and you've past chair of the MACPA, obviously friend of ours, and you've just become this thought leader. You're under 40 award from CPA Practice Advisor. I know the AICPA is publishing your stuff. So it's great to have you here to talk about the shift change, and in particular, this movement in technology.
Excited to be here.
So I just love to know, we keep hearing social, mobile, cloud. Give us your take. Like, what's going on? What do you see happening? And what should CPAs be thinking about?
Sure. Technology's, it's the Wild West right now. There is so much change happening so quickly in so many different places. And it's making for challenges in security, primarily. As technology becomes more mobile, more portable, it's introducing security challenges and vulnerabilities that it's making it difficult for consumers to even keep up with what they do need to know and how to not expose themselves to liabilities and potentially issues that they just don't even know, because by and large, most people are not technologists and don't know, but it's like a lot of like getting a gun permit. You have to understand safety and
the basics.
And because things are changing, it's really hard to keep up. The data is so portable now that people are carrying private information with them in their pockets, and they really don't understand the implications of that. There's a lot of vendors out there who are trying to educate and provide tools, but it's a lot of convenience. But with that convenience comes certain things that people need to educate themselves on and understand why they exist. Passwords, for example, why we need passwords. Multi-factor authentication. I'm sure anybody who's doing online banking, they're seeing changes in the way that they log into the systems. Yeah. And it's all wrapped around the portability, mobility of that information, and the security that's required to follow. But that being said, there's a lot of great stuff. There's the technology in the virtualization world is allowing for the cloud to become more and more productive for end users, for customers, for businesses. The different solutions that are coming out to work with smartphones and all the tablets and various devices that are letting us stay connected to the information and knowledge that we need to stay connected to 24/7, 365 from everywhere. We have a client in Fairbanks, Alaska that is working on data and information that's sitting here in Baltimore as if it's right in front of them. It's pretty amazing the productivity gains that people are able to get because of these changes in technology.
Well, we've gone through that, and you've been a big part of that, trying to help us migrate to a, hosted, to get moving to the cloud, right? And I think that is critical. But how fast is that happening? Is this starting to explode now? Everyone wants to know, are we hitting the tipping point? Or are we past it?
That's a good question. Because I think 5 years ago, I don't think we could have even envisioned where we are today. The technology is moving so quickly. And so if I look at smartphones, just in 5 years, they were nothing like what they are today.
Yeah.
So I think we're beyond the tipping point, but at the same time, I feel like we're kind of leveraged to the nth degree with respect to that tipping point. It's every day there's new solutions that are coming out that just blow me away. Not all of it is consumer facing. For example, the systems that we host and manage, there's an amazing amount of technology that's coming along to make things faster, better, stronger, because in the old world of distributed technology, where everybody had a device that had RAM and processor and hard drives on it, the requirements for speed and stability were lower because it was a distributed effort. Now with the cloud, everything is getting centralized. So the need, a 10 gigabit network 2 years ago was no big deal because you couldn't even possibly use that amount of bandwidth. And now today, it's essential to be bringing in that technology because it's all getting centralized. It's no longer distributed. So there's a lot of advancements in disk speed, network speed, virtualization that are making all of this stuff happen that ultimately gets delivered to consumers through apps and various things. But it's all that plumbing that's making it work that's innovating very quickly.
Yeah. So tell us about like what your average. What are you seeing happening in the market? What are the kind of things you're doing? What are some of the things that you're working on to literally virtualize folks and help people move to this new mobile world?
Sure. For example, Cisco has been investing very heavily. They have a vested interest in all of the cloud space. And one of the things they have introduced is a new blade server technology called UCS, which we've invested in. We're setting that up. There's a lot of similar service providers to us who are also working with Cisco. And that is basically putting in a box what used to require 5 racks of computers and servers now in this small box. And the back-end connectivity that allows for is just amazing. So Cisco is definitely developing a lot of hardware, and then with that comes the storage infrastructure, all the hard drives, and storage growth. I recently came across a hard drive that had about 25,000 digital pictures that I took between like 2000 and 2005. And the amount of data that was actually being stored was so small. Now in a month, I accumulate the same amount of storage just in the pictures I take in 1 month compared to 5 years worth of pictures from 15 years ago. So, we need more capacity, and with that, we need the speed to be able to access that information quickly.
Interesting. Now, the whole movement, let's talk about the speed of change right now, because I always go back to the Moore's Law notion, but what they're saying is like it's now triple in the sense that, so processing speed is continuing to double every year, bandwidth is doubling every year, and storage capacity is doubling every year. And to your point, like has to do that, but that's creating, one of the things we've been talking about with our CPAs is like, you need to understand what exponential change really looks like, because we all think in terms of linear change, but exponential is the hockey stick, right? So it goes like that, and we're like up there now, and it's continuing at that level. It just doubles every year, and so people are used to the change that was back on that part of it, right? And sure. I think I heard it explained well. It really fascinated me. It's like if you take 30 steps, that's linear, right? So 1, 2 to 30. And that would be 30 yards, yep. Right? But if you take 30 steps exponentially,
sure,
that's 1 billion yards, yep. Or 6 times around the Earth. So just think about that pace of change. So we're in that 6 times around the Earth phase, not the 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, right? Right. So that's what I think is hard I know a lot of our members have wrapped their head around, is that you can't assume that because things didn't change fast 5 years ago, they're not, because a lot of people like rest their life, well, you guys said this stuff was going to be all around and doing all this stuff, 5 years ago, but it didn't do it. So I didn't get hurt then. I don't need to worry about going to the cloud now. Sure. What would you say to that?
It's definitely one of those things where you don't have to do anything until you do. And that moment when you do is when, how many times in your life have you looked back and said, man, I wish I had done that years before? You thought you were cruising
buy
along.
Apple stock.
Right, absolutely. Look back, there's exponential growth right there, right?
Exactly.
And translate that to your bank account, and people get that.
Right.
And there's that other story about the, I think it's a checkerboard and rice.
Chessboard, yeah.
Or chessboard, and that's again that who knew that
64 squares.
Right, was a lifetime's full of rice. By then you double, and so it is hard to imagine, especially when people aren't technologists. Like people don't even have the awareness of the technology that's changed the way power is delivered to our buildings. Right. There's been so much innovation in that alone. Yeah. And so granted, that can happen without our involvement. And the switch still flips up and power turns on, but not everything is like that. Right. Sure, you can continue to do what you do, but one day, there's going to be that moment where you have to change. And I think what people lose sight of is they think that it's such a major leap that they have to, eat the entire elephant in one sitting. Right. And people need to, if you're exploring the cloud, for example, get a ShareFile account and start using ShareFile, and then you get comfort with that, and then you can add bill.com or something like that, and add small pieces and gain that comfort. That way, when you do have to make that change, it's not quite as dramatic.
That's a good point. So talk about that. Like, so if you're in a corporate, take one of our corporate CFOs, right, and they got everything's on-premise, hosted, right? How do they step through this? Is there some options? Like, what are some ways that they could approach it?
There's definitely options, and ShareFile I'm partial to because I love the product, but I think it's one of those really easy places that also fills a gap that a lot of people don't realize. How many controllers out there say, yeah, let me just email you that payroll report to their auditor or something like that. And what they don't understand is they've actually exposed a huge privacy liability by doing that. Email. So close the gap and get ShareFile. It's a cloud-based technology that is really easy to use, and it actually solves a specific challenge that you're not addressing otherwise. There are so many technologies. There's a CFO with a fast food chain that has talked about the way they've used technology and the cloud to innovate things like they know exactly how much is in every safe in every one of their locations because those safes report to a cloud server that gives that type of information. They're able to control the environment in their stores because it's all reports to a cloud location. So no matter what industry you're in, there's opportunities. And for them, it's sometimes hard to know what those options are. And the best place is to go to their groups, the MACPAs of the world, and talk to other controllers to find out what are those things. And sometimes you talk to somebody who's done it all, and it sounds amazing, and you go, how can I even begin? And you just have to begin. You can't.
So you gotta get started.
Yep.
Baby steps is one other area. How about the firm side? Like, what are those folks doing? So you had all this stuff. A lot of software in an accounting firm, tax, audit, practice management. Sure. Some of that's been moving to the cloud, some of it not. What's this hybrid thing? Like, is that real, and what's that mean? Like, what would you say about that?
I think hybrid is still very much the way to go, by and large, because there are providers out there who have cloud solutions in the tax world and the practice management world, but it's not everything. There are so many tools that CPAs use on an everyday basis that they can't all live in the cloud right now. Mm-hmm. 5 years from now, maybe they will. But right now, they can't. And what some people have a tendency to do is say, well, I can't do this in
all
the
or
cloud,
nothing.
so right. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like again, similar to the business and industry controller, find those opportunities where it actually solves a challenge. Like because that's something else that people do is sometimes they go to the cloud because they were told they were supposed to go there. And all they do is run into things that, oh, it's so different, it's slower, the problem is that they're not going there with a specific reason, they're just going there because they were told they had to. Right. And every firm, there are so many cloud-based solutions that actually provide efficiency, provide productivity gains, and solve issues. So take them piece by piece.
So figure out the business issue. I mean, we put Tally and Bill.com in, but we still have a legacy accounting package that's it's hosted by on Citrix with you, and we migrated our AMS that's in the cloud hosted, but we don't have a cloud-based AMS, right? So you're right. I guess that is the hybrid deal, and
absolutely
we're feeling our way through it from that standpoint too. So it's kind of interesting, but. What do you see? What's next?
What is next?
Next is in next week, or
if I knew, my bank account would be exponentially growing. It is. Everything is changing. I think we're definitely going to see a collapsing of the multiple devices, our smartphones, our tablets, our laptops. I do see smartphones. The screens are getting larger. The processing power is expanding. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to just plug our phone into a dock, have our monitors, and just work from there. The fact that we're carrying so many devices is really silly. Yeah. So I do expect in the near future we're going to see some consolidation within the types of devices, that we're carrying, but I do think we're going to see an expansion in the types of devices that exist. In more of the hybrid almost between the phone and the actual laptop. Yeah. So that's definitely something I see coming down the chain. Obviously, cloud is going to continue to expand. We're going to see more migration of the legacy applications into the cloud.
Yep. Everybody's working on a cloud-based solution.
Everybody is. That's where the big software vendors are investing their dollars. Successfully or not remains to be seen. But I do think in the near future we're going to see some legacy apps disappearing from a support perspective because everybody's going to go to subscription-based cloud software.
So that's the other risk. If you wait too long, your support could go away for your old legacy systems, right? We've seen Microsoft do that in some areas. I'm sure these big platforms, once they start migrating, they're going to say, I can't afford to support a legacy that's in a very declining base. So that's probably something you have to worry about. How about the Internet of Things? Like, I've been reading a lot about that. Any perspective from you on that? Because that's, I think, another one of those. It's a game changer, right? The Apple Watch just this week, that's connected to everything. So you can take your phone calls from there. You can get messages. It tracks your blood pressure, sends that to the cloud. So when everything starts talking to everything, like, what is all that going to mean?
There's part of me that gets really excited, and then there's part of me that gets a little bit scared too, because it's when you have to start worrying about things in your bathroom being hacked.
Right.
That's
right, because those are all like holes into your, as they say, your refrigerator will be talking to the milk and will tell you when your milk is out, right? And then it could talk to Amazon, order you milk to be shipped to you.
Which is awesome.
Which is awesome until someone hacks it and then your milk shipped somewhere else.
That's it. There's so many conveniences that really excite me about it. The Nest thermostats for your home.
Right.
The home automation, it's incredibly exciting. It's going to save, heating and cooling. It has so many opportunities because communication is the underlying
Right.
value prop to all of it. Because once these things communicate, they're no longer working within a silo of themselves.
Yeah.
We're going to start seeing, Wi-Fi built into things that who knew somebody would want Wi-Fi to be built into them, or Bluetooth, or whatever the communication platform is. So it's very exciting. It is a little bit scary for somebody who really knows and understands the vulnerabilities that exist.
Like everything, there's always a dark side to almost any innovation, right? So one more thing that I keep worrying about our profession around is currency, right? So talk a little bit about that stuff, Bitcoin and Apple Pay, and like how are CPAs going to know how to audit and account for these things, right? Most legacy systems, forget it. But can you track, if someone wants to pay you in Bitcoins, who's going to track that, and how are you going to give them change?
It's a great question. The virtual currency is just, it's a whole nother world that is actually happening faster than anybody can even keep up with from a regulation perspective. From a valuation perspective, it's changing by the minute. Yeah. I was joking the other day, I actually went to a barber shop that has a cigar box that they literally just keep their cash in. And that guy's never going to have an issue with Bitcoins. Right. but meanwhile, you hear about people wanting to start to pay with Bitcoins.
Right.
And I think it just reinforces the point that the MACPA, the profession has been saying for years, that we have to constantly be learning. It's our only tool. Yeah. You have to equip yourself with information, and I think the tendency of a lot of people, especially with like Bitcoin, for example, it's a technology thing. I'm not going to pay attention to it. It's never going to affect me. I don't think people can have that perspective anymore.
I think you're right. This stuff's coming, and coming to a theater near you, and you need to be starting to at least pay attention. I think that's it, right? CPAs have to be more future-minded and looking out at some of this stuff, and not bucket, well, it's technology, so I don't know anything about technology, I'm just going to leave that alone. They have to at least be paying attention to it, and they have to be working with people that might be able to help them from that standpoint, I think. I mean, it's funny because you're having this interview with you. You and I started on Second Life, 8 or 9 years ago, and we were doing virtual currency. Linden's was a big 100%. Controversy back then, but that was the beginning that was probably the first real virtual currency, or one of the first
that had any
serious value and economic issues. There's all kinds of. They didn't know whether they needed the Federal Reserve Bank needed to regulate it. Remember, there was all kinds of stuff going on. So that's the kind of stuff like we have to be watching. This stuff's so even though it took 8 years for it to go from that to Bitcoin, it's now moving. It's in the hockey puck phase now. So it's
for sure.
Bitcoin is just the beginning, and it isn't just Bitcoin. There's all kinds of other ones they're starting to pop up. So so it means security, virtual currency, Internet of Things, cloud, mobile, social. All that stuff's in the mix now.
It is, and I think there's a lot of people who have the tendency to say this is a generational thing. Yeah.
Your generation, you caused all this.
Yeah, right.
You're making our lives miserable.
That's it, and it's actually there's some irony to that statement because I work with people of all ages with technology, and we will see the same questions from a 60-something and a 25-something because even though we have these digital natives in the workforce, they're digital natives to their smartphones. Right. They're digital natives to...
Doesn't mean they know how to program.
No, not at all. It doesn't mean that they know how to use an accounting system. Right. They might be great at PowerPoint, but advanced Excel, not necessarily. Yeah. So it's definitely a misnomer to assume that this is something that the young kids they know it and understand it, so I don't need to bother because I'll just ask one of them.
Right.
Everybody needs to get on board and just kind of shed the whole concept of generational challenges.
Yeah, it's funny. Bill Sheridan and I were talking about that the other day and saying that we just have to stop talking about generations. We have to just start working together.
Right.
And but the point of reverse mentoring is a legitimate one. When you do have skill sets, no matter what age they are, you can use those to help you learn, whatever level you are, right? All right, one final thing I want to touch on, which is you are running, so we just visited a bunch of students at your alma mater, I think I was talking about, right down at Salisbury University, and they were fascinated by Barrett Young's story. He's a you're millennial. He's in your group doing the entrepreneur thing. He started his own business. You have your own company. You're running effectively a technology company, and it's not just in Maryland.
Right.
Like, so talk about the idea of how technology has helped you to become national, or you might be international, I guess. How does that work? And just tell a little about it, because I think that's the true potential of this whole technology wave, is that you're no longer working on a sphere of influence that used to be 5 or 10 miles from your house.
That's right.
Right? Talk a little bit about that.
No, it's a great point. I just had a conversation with one of my clients the other day who was talking about her son who's like 10 years old. He's on his Xbox, and he's playing a game with some guys in Germany. And they may as well be his next door neighbor. Right. That is how small the world has become because technology has allowed us access to those things. Yeah. So for us, sure, we could be a successful business in Maryland, but technology and the fact that we can have clients in Fairbanks, Alaska, and deliver them the same service that we can deliver right here in Towson is just amazing. The pond is so much larger for fishing.
Yeah.
And that I think is, I from very early on embraced that, and it didn't scare me. That was like a competitive advantage. And for people, it also gives us the ability to specialize even more, because if somebody wanted to specialize in equine dentists, there's only so many equine dentists in Maryland, but maybe if whatever your service, you can leverage technology to support equine dentists around the country, times 50, times 100 of what you might have here in Maryland. Right. And you can be the best in the world at whatever that is and have a very large population of potential clients.
It's the long tail, right? You get into the long tail.
It absolutely is. It's pretty cool to be able to work with people all over the world.
That's the promise that this whole shift makes, right? The whole shift from the old stuck to your premise, when we were talking the other day with a bunch of boomers, and like when we went to work, it was your phone and your computer were at work. So when you left work, you couldn't connect. You couldn't do business even if you wanted to. So it's a whole different environment now. To contrast that with sitting down with the kids in Salisbury last night, the accounting students, and the number one thing they want is work-life balance and flexibility. And I said, What does flexibility mean to you? And they said, it means I can work from wherever I am. And I'm like, well, tell me more about that. Well, school, we can submit our exams, from my home on vacation or in spring break or whatever. I don't have to go and walk into class and lay the paper on the desk. I can click, email, and do it. So from wherever I am, why can't I work that way? Right. So I think that's a perfect contrast, like from my old days of I had to come in and sit to the computer attached to my desk, and now my computer goes wherever I go, and that's what people want, right? But that's all technology.
It is, and in the same vein, which I know MACPA has embraced this, is as an employer, we can now attract and keep talent that isn't right down the street anymore. Yeah. And you can build a team of all-stars, and you're no longer limited by their ability to drive into the office. Yeah. And that scares the heck out of so many people. But for those of us who get it,
right,
what a game-changing opportunity that is. Again, it's all because technology enables that.
It is interesting how this whole shift change boils down to this. All right, let me ask you this: if you had to like just sum up your wisdom right now, all the experience you've had in this world, into like a 3x5 card, what would be the key things you would say to any of our CPAs that might be watching that say like what are the 3 or 4 things they should be doing to be thinking about how to make the shift change and how to think about this technology thing in a fresh way?
Well, it's definitely, and we touched on it earlier, one step at a time. Yeah. You don't have to eat the whole elephant in one bite. Yeah. So that's definitely one. 2 is don't be intimidated. It's really easy to be scared because it is change. Most people avoid change at all costs. Yeah. And the change is happening whether you like it or not. So, there's leverage the knowledge that you have accessibility to, which if you Google it's the sum of all human
and your
knowledge.
Network, right? And tap your network, right?
Absolutely. Especially for the CPA population, I mean, the MACPA alone has so many great resources available that it's a travesty not to take advantage of that knowledge that you have accessibility to. Again, enabled by technology, by the way.
Right.
I think probably 3 is don't necessarily do things. Have a destination in mind as you take on these technologies.
So strategy. What's the purpose and what are you trying to do?
Don't do it just because. I'll do a lot of things just because, and I'll probably throw 90% of them away, and 10% there'll be something to hold on to. But for everybody else, you can find out what's working well for others and leverage that. You don't have to be bleeding edge or even leading edge, but you can still take advantage of technology, being somewhere in the middle.
So it's interesting because in this short conversation, we've covered like every aspect of the shift change, as you know, right? I mean, you've covered the leadership, workplace, you name it. The one that we haven't hit on is like learning. What are you seeing in learning? So you're a millennial, and I can tell you about some of the things that we're up to here. But what's your take on that?
It's really exciting what's happening in the learning space. I look at things like Khan Academy and the nano learning that it has now been enabled because of the cloud and technology. Everything, it is giving us that accessibility to information that we never had before. It only lived either in the classroom or in a library. Yeah. And these things are changing the way we learn because we can actually download an amazing amount of information very quickly into our brains. And we can do it, we can listen to it while we drive, we can read through it while we're standing in line at the grocery store. Yeah. It's the portability and the accessibility due to technology has just completely flipped learning on its head. And I guess this is one place where the younger generations do have a leg up because they're doing it. In middle school, high school, and college, they're taking exams from the beach.
Right. So we're trying to move that way, and you've been part of this. But the AICPA has led a future of learning study for the profession. The challenge we're going to face is getting the regulators to move with us. We just got our official notice that our regulations for 10-minute CPE were approved in the state of Maryland. So we are the first official state. Ohio is right with us. NASBA and the AICPA both are involved in that. So our standard, we think, is a good national standard model. So we'll be producing that idea of nano CPE. We're looking at taking blog posts and videos and podcasts and trying to figure out how to flip those into micro nano learning. So we like to call it like just when you need it learning. Sure. So the idea would be like you're getting ready to go and do a tax return for a 1040 and you go, I'm kind of brushed up on this moving expense. Well, look up the 10-minute module on what do you need to know about moving expense. Listen to it and then go do it. If you need more, go deeper into the 1 hour or take the 4 hour that might be on demand. So that's exciting, I think, from that standpoint. And I still think Second Life might come back. Like if they had ever made that a browser-based, that virtual world, that was a pretty intense environment that we found CPAs liked.
Yeah, and it made that the classroom virtual so that you could have professors
coming in from anywhere.
From anywhere,
Yeah.
that typically you would not have accessibility to. And I think now with HTML5 and some of the things that are happening out there with the browsers is you're right.
You might see that.
May not be Second Life, but it'll be some form of virtual world to go into and learn.
Yeah.
The Matrix is coming. We're going to be able to download like how to fly an Apache helicopter just like that.
Pop it in. So I think it's an exciting time because I think for the profession that's got this exponential growth in regs and standards and all kinds of complexity, having this ability to learn anytime, anywhere, be fresh on it, not have to wait and schedule webcasts and all that. Right. Clearly, we're still going to be doing traditional public seminars, but we're going to be supplementing a lot with e-learning and nano learning and new formats, flipping the classrooms, those kind of things. I think it's an exciting time. Not all technology driven, but it's certainly, the key to the success right now is, like you said, you got to keep that rate of learning faster than this rate of change.
Absolutely, and I think that's one other part of the 3x5 card is, your future relevance is not going to be based on what you know. It's going to be based on how quickly you can find the information that you need to know.
Right.
And by embracing these different technologies that create that accessibility to learning, that's going to be people's value. Yeah. It's your value today, and 10 years from now, that is going to be what you're measured upon, the ability to find the answer.
And that's, social learning, social media, all those are tools, all part of that kind of mix. So cool, love it. Byron, thank you for being here and
thank you.
Spending some time with us today.
Appreciate it.